Hi guys, it's Sophie. So I wanted to do my November wrap up. We're a little bit late, but we're doing okay. So where do we start? Should we start with fiction? I've got less fiction because it was a non-fiction November. I feel like I didn't read as much as I felt like I read in November. I felt like I read a lot, but let's start with the fiction. So I read Night Waking by Sarah Moss. If you haven't heard about what this one centres around, we follow a couple who are both academics who have moved to this remote Hebridean island for her husband to study puffins, and the wife is essentially like a historian. She's writing papers. She works at Oxford but is like trapped in this house away from everyone with her children who just kind of are driving her mad. It's a book that's looking at like her place as a mother and the devaluing of her work as an academic. Though her husband is very loving, it's definitely not a cruel thing, it's more of a forgetful thing, which maybe is even worse. And the kind of crux of the novel, the plot point is that whilst digging in the garden to plant some trees, the wife comes across the skeletonized remains of a child that's clearly not that old. It's not just ancient, but who has it come from? Why is it on this house? Why is it in this house? Why is it in their garden? And that feeling of just oddity in this strange little place separated from the world. I really enjoyed it. This is the last of Sarah Moss's fiction that I had yet to read, and I'm a little bit sad it's all gone. But I like that one. Then I finally got around to reading The Underground Railroad, and I don't know why it took me so long to read this one, but I read it and I really enjoyed it. I feel like this is, well, it's 2017 and I feel like everyone's read it. I feel like even if you don't read that much, you've read this one. But I did really enjoy it, and as I say, I don't know what prompted me to suddenly be like, yes, I'm going to buy this. Maybe I saw it like on Instagram or in a film or something and I was like, how have I not read it? It is a like fictionalized account of the Underground Railroad told as if the railroad was an actual underground train, rather than like the connection of safe houses, and it goes across following one woman who has escaped slavery and is just like running across the United States. I really liked it, but I'm also very aware it's very well known and quite old, so I won't talk about it too much. And then Absorbed, poor Absorbed. I did like this in the end, but do you know what? This book had to fight pretty hard to be liked, not because of anything to do with it, because I read it in a month where I wasn't really reading fiction. I wasn't reading fiction that was like of this type, and I read it in tiny bursts. So in a really weird way, I would even more highly recommend this than the feeling I have about it, because if it managed to get finished through the fact that I couldn't even sit down and read it in one go for any period of time over the month, it's probably a pretty damn good book. It follows a woman who is in this relationship with her partner, and she feels less than, she feels quite vulnerable in this relationship, as if she's on the edge. She's the one that's putting herself out there for him, trying to hold on to him, that she constantly feels that the relationship's on threat and she's not as interesting as maybe he thinks she is. And one day she absorbs him, like literally absorbs her boyfriend into her skin, and on it goes. I would say it's like a little bit body horror, but mostly it didn't, weirdly, despite the fact it is a very odd sort of horrible premise and the way it's told, it just felt very much like contemporary fiction. It felt very relatable. Yeah, so I really liked it. It's quite funny in parts, and I think if I'd read this and it wasn't the wrong time, I would have loved it. So please don't take any lukewarmness from me as a negative on that one. Then on to non-fiction. I read On Immunity by Eula Bliss. I read two Eula Bliss books. This one is a weird one. I love her writing, that's really the first thing to say. I have completely fallen in love with the way she writes, the way she talks, and I find her very easy to listen to. This book is an odd one. It is not quite stepping into the realms of anti-vaccination, but there's definitely vaccine hesitancy in here. And while she does have her child vaccinated, while she does have vaccines herself, there's a lot of fear wound up in here about this. I don't know. I'm not a mum, so maybe it's part of that. But this kind of, she had a very sensible head on her in terms of risk levels before she had a baby. Once she has a baby, everything just falls completely out of proportion. It feels like everything is going to kill her child, down to like chemicals that are in a mattress. And one of the things she becomes paranoid about is immunisation. I felt okay reading this, but I would be hesitant to recommend it to people in case there's people that are like on the fence and see these as really good arguments. I think if you can read this as an account of kind of her insecurity and the way in which your brain can get a little bit frazzled when you feel like you're looking after something that's so vulnerable, I think you could enjoy it. But I'm also quite tentative, just given current climates and things, as to whether I should recommend it. The other one I would recommend more easily is Having and Being Had, which is by Una Bliss again. And I read this one first and I just loved it. This is looking at the relationship we have with the things that we own, the way in which we perceive ourselves in respect of what we own, and kind of critiques like the capitalistic desire to associate ourselves with our stuff. I really wanted like almost even more of this. It's definitely people of a certain economic level. Like I would say that this family is pretty well off. They're certainly more well off than we are here, and we're pretty well off, like, and globally we're very well off. But the kind of sense of having as much as you need and still wanting more, that kind of I guess like luxury purchasing desire, it was just really interesting. I've not really heard it spoken about in such a personal way before, as like a critique of our economy and how that system functions. I've only ever heard that in an academic sense, rather than a like, this is what that means for me and my life, and the way I'm interacting with stuff. I just thought it was really interesting. It is a particular type of book, but I really liked it. Then I have Writing the Uncanny, which is a collection of essays about uncanniness in fiction. I really like this. I think it's helpful if you are trying to write anything that feels uncanny, but also if you're looking for some recommendations of authors that write in that way. I definitely found in here some authors that I'd never heard of before, and through the essays they kind of quote specific pieces to describe the uncanniness or how that's presented. And I hadn't heard of some of them, and they sound really interesting. So yeah, I really like this. Whether you're a writer or whether you're just interested in uncanny writing, I think you'll enjoy it. And then I have two David Quammen books. I have The Tangled Tree, which is a history of life. It sounds really broad, but probably narrowing it down a little bit. It's more about the categorization of life forms into specific camps. So bacteria, viruses, and then there's something called like urocytes, and a group called like Archaea. So it's like goes from sort of Darwinism and evolution of species and pre that, and how people want to put everything in camps, to kind of biologists struggling to find actually what camps are at all. Is there any solid lines between things of different varieties? And over time, because we're going smaller, we're kind of going back in time, so we're getting closer to the origin of life. It definitely is like popular biology reading, and I don't think it's like the most compellingly written book, I have to say. I think you have to have interest in carrying on, but I did actually like it. I think I never would have picked it up if I'd have known it was more about classification of species than like the way in which life has evolved. That was kind of our starting point, and then we moved backwards. But I did enjoy it. I think if you've got someone that's into biology in your life, they might enjoy this one. And then the last book I read in November was Spillover, which is also by David Quammen, and This is all about different infectious diseases. This one, where the Tangled Tree wasn't, this one reads like a thriller. This is such a compelling picture of disease, zoonotic disease, basically, zoonotic disease, and how it functions. So it's in different sections looking at different diseases. It's on 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 different diseases, how they spread, how they function. There's interviews with veterinary like professionals. There's conversations with epidemiologists, and the author like treks around these locations. Like in one of the sections called 13 Gorillas, he's like looking with the scientists for the bodies of gorillas that have been killed by Ebola. This is fascinating if you're interested in how diseases function, if you have that like problem, if you have that experience where sometimes you want non-fiction that reads like fiction. I could not recommend Spillover more highly. I loved it. So that's everything I read in November. I think it's 8 books. Yeah, only 8 books. But that's okay. I feel like it felt like a lot, so we'll be happy with that for this month. Yeah, I'll see you guys again soon in my next video, and look after yourselves until then.